At 11:34 this morning, Eastern Standard Time, Air Force One was scheduled to depart Joint Base Andrews for a trip to Cleveland, Ohio. The president was scheduled to deliver remarks at a manufacturing facility at 2:30 p.m. local time. Press corps had already boarded the press charter. The motorcade had departed the White House at 10:47 a.m. Secret Service advance teams were in position in Cleveland. And then, 23 minutes before scheduled wheels up, the trip was canceled. No explanation was provided to the press. No statement was issued by the White House. The motorcade returned to the White House at 11:52 a.m. And at 12:17 p.m., a single-line statement appeared on the White House website. Quote, "Presidential travel has been suspended indefinitely pending resolution of operational requirements," end quote. Subscribe to this channel immediately and turn on all notifications, because what I am about to show you is not a scheduling change. This is Air Force One, the most visible symbol of American presidential power, grounded without explanation during a constitutional crisis. And the reasons why this happened reveal how deep the fractures in the U.S. government have become. Here is what you need to know. The decision to ground Air Force One did not come from the White House. It came from the Air Force. And according to 3 sources with knowledge of the situation, the Air Force refused to fly the aircraft because of disagreements about who has authority to order the mission. Stay with me, because this gets complicated fast. Let me take you through what happened this morning. At 7:30 a.m., White House Military Office sent standard mission authorization to 89th Airlift Wing at Andrews. At 8:15 a.m., Wing responded requesting clarification whether mission approved by Commander-in-Chief under current constitutional status, not standard language. Signals Air Force questioning authority. At 8:47 a.m., White House said, authorization valid, proceed. At 9:23 a.m., Wing Commander contacted Air Force Chief of Staff, 14-minute call. At 9:37 a.m., Chief contacted Chairman of Joint Chiefs. At 10:04 a.m., Chairman contacted Defense Secretary. At 10:51 a.m., 23 minutes before wheels up, Defense Secretary told White House, Military Office Air Force One will not fly pending clarification of constitutional authority. Hit that like button right now if you are beginning to understand what just happened. The United States Air Force just refused to fly the president because they are not certain he has the authority to order the flight. That is not a maintenance issue. That is not a security concern. That is a constitutional crisis manifesting in the most visible possible way. The President of the United States cannot travel because the military is questioning whether he is actually the president. Now, let me show you why this happened and why it connects to everything else that is unfolding. On Thursday at 4:17 a.m., the Vice President invoked Section 4 of the 25th Amendment. 11 cabinet secretaries signed a declaration stating the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office under the 25th Amendment. That invocation immediately transferred presidential authority to the Vice President. But at 9:34 a.m. Thursday, the President's legal team transmitted a counter letter to Congress asserting that no inability exists under the constitutional text. That counter letter immediately restored his authority. So from 4:17 a.m. to 9:34 a.m. Thursday, the Vice President was the acting president. From 9:34 a.m. Thursday until now, the President has resumed authority. But here is the complication. The Vice President and Cabinet have 4 days from the counter letter to send a second declaration reaffirming their position. If they do, the dispute goes to Congress for a vote. And during that period, the question of who holds presidential authority becomes contested again. What the Air Force is saying by grounding Air Force One is this: we are not comfortable taking orders from someone whose constitutional authority to give those orders is disputed. Because if we fly a mission under disputed authority and Congress later votes to sustain the 25th Amendment removal, then we flew a mission for someone who was not actually the president. That creates legal liability for the Air Force, potential violations of the chain of command, and sets a precedent that the military will follow orders from people whose authority is contested. The military does not want to set that precedent, so they are refusing to fly until constitutional clarity is restored. Now, let me show you why this matters beyond one canceled trip. Air Force One is not just transportation. It is a symbol of presidential authority and American power. When Air Force One lands in a foreign capital, it sends a message that the President of the United States is here and U.S. power backs his words. When Air Force One is grounded, it sends the opposite message. The President cannot travel. The military will not transport him. His authority is disputed. That message is being received by allies and adversaries around the world right now. At 1:47 p.m., the allies of the Russian Foreign Ministry issued a statement, quote, "We note with interest that the U.S. president appears unable to conduct normal diplomatic travel. Russia remains open to dialogue when the United States has a functioning government." That is diplomatic language for, we see weakness and we are mocking you. At 2:23 p.m., the Chinese Foreign Ministry echoed that language. Quote, "Stable leadership is essential for productive international relations. We hope the United States will resolve its internal challenges soon." That is China saying the same thing. Your president is grounded. Your government is dysfunctional. We are watching and calculating. At 3:14 p.m., the president held a press conference in the Rose Garden. His statement was defiant, but it revealed the depth of the crisis. Quote, "The decision to ground Air Force One is part of a coordinated effort by disloyal military officers to undermine my presidency. I remain the commander-in-chief. I have full constitutional authority, and I am directing the Air Force to reverse this decision immediately." That statement creates an impossible situation. The president is ordering the Air Force to fly him. The Air Force is refusing because they question his authority to give that order. If the Air Force complies, they are accepting his authority. If they continue refusing, they are effectively siding with the 25th Amendment invocation. There is no neutral position. At 3:52 p.m., the Secretary of Defense issued a statement. Quote, "The Department of Defense remains committed to supporting the lawful commander-in-chief. Decisions regarding airlift operations are made based on established protocols and constitutional requirements. We are working with all relevant parties to ensure clarity and will resume normal operations when appropriate." Notice what that statement does not say. It does not say the president is the lawful commander-in-chief. It says they are committed to supporting whoever that is. It does not say when Air Force One will fly again. It says when appropriate, which is undefined. This is the Pentagon hedging because they do not want to commit to either side until constitutional clarity is restored. Share this video right now because what I am about to explain determines what happens next. The president cannot govern effectively if he cannot travel. Presidential power depends on presence. Meeting with factory workers in Ohio, addressing troops at military bases, conducting diplomacy in foreign capitals, all of that requires the ability to travel securely with the full apparatus of presidential authority. If Air Force One is grounded, the president is confined to Washington. He can hold press conferences. He can issue statements, but he cannot project power the way presidents need to project power. And if he cannot project power, his authority erodes. Now, here is the scenario that multiple sources tell me is being discussed inside the Pentagon. If the vice president and cabinet send their second declaration, which they have until Monday to do, then we enter the 21-day congressional deliberation period. During those 21 days, who has presidential authority depends on when the declarations were sent. The president has authority until the second declaration reaches Congress. Then the vice president becomes acting president again, and Congress has 21 days to vote. If Congress sustains the removal with a 2/3 vote, the vice president remains acting president for the term. If they do not reach 2/3, the president resumes full authority. But during those 21 days, authority could transfer back and forth multiple times depending on the timing of declarations. And the military cannot operate under those conditions. They cannot have Air Force One fly one day under presidential authority and refuse the next day because a new declaration transferred power to the vice president. So the Pentagon's position, according to sources, is that Air Force One will not fly until the constitutional question is resolved one way or another. Either the vice president withdraws the 25th Amendment Declaration or Congress votes to sustain or reject it. Until then, Presidential travel is suspended. Let me show you what else has been suspended, because Air Force One is not the only presidential asset affected. At 4:37 p.m., NBC News reported that Marine One, the presidential helicopter, has also been grounded. The Marine Corps operates Marine One and has apparently adopted the same position as the Air Force. No flights until constitutional clarity. At 5:14 p.m., CNN reported that the Secret Service has implemented what they are calling restricted movement protocols for the president. He can travel by motorcade within the Washington, D.C. area, but any travel beyond the immediate vicinity requires additional authorization that has not been defined. At 5:48 p.m., the Washington Post reported that presidential advance teams, which travel ahead of the president to prepare locations for visits, have been recalled. All scheduled presidential trips for the next 2 weeks have been canceled or postponed indefinitely. What this adds up to is a president who is effectively confined to the White House and its immediate surroundings. He can walk to the Oval Office. He can hold meetings in the West Wing. He can address the press in the Rose Garden, but he cannot fly to Ohio. He cannot visit troops in Europe. He cannot attend a summit in Asia. His mobility, and therefore his ability to exercise presidential power in the traditional sense, has been severely restricted. Now, let me show you the political implications, because this is accelerating the crisis rather than resolving it. At 6:23 p.m., Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer gave a statement, quote, "The fact that the military has effectively grounded the president demonstrates the seriousness of the concerns raised by the vice president and cabinet. The Senate will proceed with hearings this weekend, and we will move quickly to a vote." That statement is Schumer using the Air Force One grounding as evidence that the 25th Amendment invocation was justified. If even the military does not trust the president's authority, Schumer is arguing, then Congress should vote to sustain the removal. At 7:01 p.m., Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell responded, quote, "The decision to ground Air Force One is a dangerous precedent. The military does not get to decide who is president, Congress does, and until Congress votes, the president retains his constitutional authority. I call on the Secretary of Defense to reverse this decision immediately." McConnell is arguing the opposite. The military is overstepping by refusing to fly the president. Only Congress can remove him, and until they vote, he has authority. These two positions are irreconcilable, and the longer they remain irreconcilable, the more paralyzed the government becomes. Let me walk you through 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, VP withdraws declaration. Cabinet determines concerns addressed. President agrees to evaluation. Declaration withdrawn. Clarity restored. Air Force One flies. De-escalation requires compromise. Neither side showing willingness. Scenario 2, VP sends second declaration Monday. Power transfers back to her. President no longer president during 21-day congressional period. Air Force One flies with VP, not president. Hearings, evidence, vote. 2/3 sustain or president resumes. Has process, follows Constitution, but 21 days uncertainty. Scenario 3, stalemate. President refuses limits, orders flight. Air Force refuses, fires Defense Secretary, appoints acting secretary. Air Force Chief refuses anyway. President keeps firing until finding compliance. Eventually run out of officers willing to risk court-martial orders. Nobody executes, not just grounded airplane collapse of chain of command. Subscribe to this channel right now and set notifications to all, because tomorrow is critical. Here are the 5 indicators I am watching. Indicator 1, does the vice president send the second declaration by Monday? If she does, we enter scenario 2. If she does not, it suggests negotiations are happening for scenario 1. Indicator 2, does the president attempt to fly anyway? If he orders a flight and the Air Force refuses again, that escalates the confrontation. Indicator 3, does the Secretary of Defense resign or get fired? If he leaves voluntarily or not, it signals scenario 3 is beginning. Indicator 4, do any senior military officers make public statements? The military has stayed silent. If anyone speaks publicly, it will reveal which side the Pentagon is on. Indicator 5, what do international actors do? If China or Russia make moves that require presidential response and the president cannot travel to address them that tests whether the U.S. government can function in crisis. Here is what we know for certain. Air Force One is grounded indefinitely. The Air Force refused to fly because constitutional authority is disputed. The president is effectively confined to Washington. Marine One is also grounded. Secret Service has restricted movement protocols. All advance teams recalled. Senate Democrats say this proves the 25th Amendment was justified. Senate Republicans say the military is overstepping and no resolution is in sight. This is not about logistics. This is about whether a president whose authority is contested can exercise the powers of the office. And right now, the answer is no. The most powerful office in the world is grounded literally. I will be watching every development. When the second declaration is sent, when the president attempts to fly, when any indicator moves, you will see analysis here immediately. Air Force One grounded, presidential power contested. The system is breaking down in real time. Subscribe now. All notifications. What happens next will define